Alyssa, what's on your radar?
If one thing has been consistent in the government's response to the coronavirus over the last year and a half, it's that it's been wildly inconsistent. A favorite mantra of the Biden White House has been to follow the science as a sort of catch-all phrase meaning do as we say. But the reality is 9 months into the Biden administration, it's clear they are picking and choosing what science to demand the public follow. Last week, the Biden White House abruptly announced it would begin rationing monoclonal antibody treatments to states. The Washington Post reports, quote, the Biden administration moved this week to stave off shortages of monoclonal antibodies, taking over distribution of the critical COVID-19 therapy, purchasing 1.4 million additional doses. The policy change that went into effect last Monday is all but certain to result in cuts of the medication to some states, especially 7 in the Deep South, with high infection rates that have been using about 70% of the national supply. Staving off shortages is a rather elegant way of saying rationing. Now, the same Washington Post reporting bizarrely states, quote, soaring demand for the therapy represents a sharp turn from just 2 months ago when monoclonal antibodies were widely available and awareness of them was low. Who was awareness of them low among? The former president of the United States vocally advocated for them. He was then famously treated with them. Effective governors in hard-hit states, particularly in the South, have been using them since they were approved for emergency use almost a year ago. Now, since before a vaccine was developed, doctors across the country found that monoclonal antibody treatment was highly effective in treating cases of COVID to avoid serious illness. Since November of 2020, under the Trump administration, monoclonal antibodies have been approved for emergency use by the FDA. And in the height of the pandemic, the treatment commonly referred to as Regeneron, the name of it, was administered across the country to people who contracted COVID and were at higher risk of getting seriously ill. It has had an extraordinary track record of helping lower the likelihood of hospitalizations. It's so effective that President Trump was prescribed it when he came down with the coronavirus in late 2020. But this is yet another move by Biden to nationalize the COVID response and to try to control states' abilities to deal with outbreaks. Former Republican Congresswoman and Dr. Nan Hayworth tweeted, quote, the Biden HHS has discovered that states like Florida and Texas, with effective GOP governors, have been doing well with monoclonal antibody therapies. Therefore, the Biden HHS has decided that it will federalize access to monoclonal antibodies because of, quote, equity. Now, the announcement to seize control and distribution under the guise of a potential shortage doesn't hold up under muster. Dr. Fauci recently said that antibody treatments like Regeneron and GSK are underutilized. The Biden White House has demonstrated no evidence that there is in fact a national shortage of the treatments, but has merely scooped them up and decided they are the best arbiters of who deserves that care. Texas Congressman Chip Roy sounded off in a letter to HHS Secretary Javier Becerra, writing, quote, the last thing HHS should be doing is impeding on a provider's ability to best serve their patients, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. This recent HHS order will further prevent doctors from being able to treat their patients and prevent their patients from receiving the care they need when they need it. The federal government should not be in the business of dictating health care. The American people deserve answers on why and under which authority HHS made this decision. Further, he asked 2 key questions that we still don't have clear answers to nearly a week later. For what reasons and by whom was this change authorized? And is there a current shortage or any expected shortage of any monoclonal antibody treatments in the U.S.? Think about this. The same people telling us to follow the science are rationing proven life-saving COVID-19 therapeutics, all while a bunch of red states suffer massive outbreaks. So Ryan, I've argued this before, whether it was the Trump administration or the Biden administration, it seems like our leaders do continue to play politics with the COVID response. I mean, what would you say? And
so are they restricting supply to red states at this point? Or is that the threat that they might do it at this point? Like, are there people right now who need this, doctors are prescribing it, and there are delays in getting it? So
Florida has been notified that they're going to be receiving significantly less treatments than they had been. Where the kind of rub here is that there's no actual known fact that there's a shortage of it. Mm-hmm. It is expensive, but I mean, we've got the funding to do so if the federal government wants to be purchasing it. So they're restricting the amount that's going to Florida, right as Florida is one of the highest surging cases within the country.
Right, and we know that it's highly effective. The reporting around Trump was that he might have died, if he hadn't gotten that treatment, what was more experimental at the time,
right.
Still somewhat experimental, not fully authorized yet, right?
Yeah, both it's under emergency use. So both in the Trump administration, remdesivir and monoclonal antibodies.
Oh, he took remdesivir, right?
He took both of them, actually.
Both. Okay.
But they were both seen to be highly effective in lowering serious cases of illness, right. Getting people out of the hospital who are that ill. So especially at a time when we've only got about 53% of the population fully vaccinated, this is a crucial therapeutic to have if we want to lower mortality rates. So I'm perplexed by this decision to decide where we're going to send the treatment. Because the other thing about COVID that we've seen since the outset of the virus is it tends to move in waves. So, the Southwest right. has a massive surge, and then in a few months it's in California, and then it's up through the Midwest. So we know that right now certain places are being hit, others are going to be next, and why not just treat it where it is now?
Right. If anybody, for political reasons, is getting shorted a life-saving drug, that'd be atrocious.
Yes, and I want to be careful to go that far in saying it, but it does seem very odd that as this has been proven very effective in Florida, and there's this kind of the way that it was framed, which is, basically no one even knew about this, but DeSantis has been using it left and right. Suddenly, the federal government is getting up to speed on something that's been approved since last year.
Right. All right, we'll see. We'll see where that heads next.
Yes,
but yeah, we'll have more Rising right after this.